She hadn't spoken a single word in her entire 10 years. Not a whisper, not a giggle, not even a sigh. The billionaire's daughter lived in a world of silence, surrounded by wealth and luxury, yet trapped in loneliness. Everyone had tried teachers, nannies, even top child psychologists, but nothing worked. Her smile was rare, and her eyes, though bright, carried a quiet sadness that money could never fix. Then came something no one expected. A single dad, working as a janitor in her father's skyscraper, crossed paths with her by chance. He was ordinary in every sense, tired from long shifts, juggling bills, and raising his own little girl, but there was a warmth in him, a patience that the world seemed to have forgotten. And somehow, that ordinary man did something extraordinary. The first time she looked at him, her eyes lingered longer than they ever had. And then, something unbelievable happened. Actions so small, so simple, yet powerful enough to crack the wall she had built around her voice. No one in her family saw it coming. No one could predict what this janitor would do, or how it might change her life forever. But just as hope began to flicker, a twist of fate threatened to undo everything. What he did next left everyone speechless, and the silence of the billionaire's daughter hung heavier than ever until the unthinkable happened. Stay tuned, because what happens next is a story you'll never forget. Every day felt the same for the billionaire's daughter. She moved through her mansion like a ghost, surrounded by glittering rooms, expensive toys, and staff who whispered around her rather than to her. Her father, a man whose time was measured in board meetings and stock deals, tried to buy her happiness, but nothing seemed to reach her. She had learned long ago that the world only expected silence from her, and she had complied. The janitor, on the other hand, had a very different life. Single-handedly raising his little girl, he knew what it meant to fight for every small moment of connection, every smile, every laugh. His world was simple, messy, and real, far from the polished halls of the billionaire's skyscraper. But there was a depth to his kindness that money could never replicate. It started with small gestures. He didn't try to force conversation or coax her to speak. Instead, he quietly cleaned the hallways she passed through, left little drawings for her to find, and sometimes just sat on the edge of her world without saying a word. She began noticing him not as a janitor, not as a stranger, but as someone different, someone safe. Whispers among the staff grew louder. Why is she watching him? What's he doing that no one else can? Questions that had no answers yet. Something was shifting, slowly, imperceptibly, but clearly enough to make everyone uneasy. And then, one rainy afternoon, a single, unexpected act broke the fragile line between silence and voice. But the consequences of it were still unknown. What happens next could change everything, but no one, not even the janitor, knew how fragile hope could be. The moment the janitor reached out to her that rainy afternoon, something inside the billionaire's daughter stirred. It wasn't words yet, nothing so bold, but a tiny twitch of her lips, a hesitation in her hand reaching for his. For the first time, someone outside her family had made her feel seen without expectation, without pressure. And that simple gesture set off a ripple that no one could control. Meanwhile, her father was growing restless. He couldn't understand why, despite all his efforts, she seemed drawn to a man he barely noticed before. Luxury cars, lavish gifts, exclusive tutors, nothing had moved her. Yet this janitor, who mopped floors and fixed leaky faucets, somehow commanded her attention with an ease that unsettled the household. The staff whispered behind closed doors, curious and cautious. Some admired his patience, others worried about the consequences if his influence went too far. Back in the janitor's life, his own daughter noticed the change too. "Why does she look at you like that?" she asked one evening as they walked home, her small hand clutching his. He didn't have an answer, only a careful smile. He knew the line he was walking was delicate. One wrong move, one misunderstanding, and the fragile trust he'd earned with the billionaire's daughter could shatter completely. Tension built quietly, like a storm gathering on the horizon. Every glance, every tiny interaction, carried weight. The world they lived in, one of wealth and privilege, the other of struggle and simplicity, seemed poised to collide. And no one knew how far the billionaire's daughter would go, or what she might risk, just to feel a connection she had never known. Days passed, and the tension in the mansion grew almost unbearable. Every corridor the billionaire's daughter walked seemed charged with unspoken energy. Every glance toward the janitor filled with curiosity and something deeper she couldn't name. The staff whispered in hushed tones, noticing the small but undeniable changes, the way she lingered near his cleaning cart, the way her fingers traced patterns on the railings he polished. It was as if the walls themselves held their breath, waiting for the inevitable. Her father, desperate for control, tried to intervene. He scheduled more tutors, organized elaborate outings, and even invited specialists to the mansion, hoping to fix what he didn't understand. Yet the girl resisted, not with rebellion but with silence, her loyalty quietly shifting toward the janitor, who had never tried to force her to be someone she wasn't. The contrast between wealth and simplicity, expectation and authenticity, became impossible to ignore. The janitor, too, felt the weight of the moment. Every interaction was careful, every smile measured, because he knew just how delicate this fragile trust was. He couldn't predict how far she might go, or what her father might do if he realized the bond forming before his eyes. Then came the night that changed everything. The mansion was quiet, rain tapping against the windows, and the girl was alone in the hallway. A small, almost imperceptible sound escaped her, a breath, a whisper, a first flicker of voice. The janitor, coming by with his evening duties, froze. His heart pounded. The air was electric, charged with possibility and fear. No one in the house could have anticipated what was about to unfold. The silence that had defined her life was on the verge of breaking, and everything hung in the balance, just as the janitor's heart raced. Convinced that the moment of connection was finally here, an unexpected voice echoed through the hallway. It wasn't hers. It was a stranger, someone the billionaire's daughter had never met, yet who seemed to know exactly where she would be. A distant relative, a new tutor, or perhaps someone sent by her father. The mansion's silence cracked, and tension shot through the air like electricity. The girl froze, her small hand trembling, caught between the janitor and this new presence. For the first time, fear mingled with curiosity in her eyes. The janitor instinctively stepped closer, but he realized this was bigger than either of them had anticipated. Whoever this person was, their sudden appearance threatened to undo all the fragile trust and small breakthroughs he had carefully nurtured. Meanwhile, her father, oblivious to the immediate danger, was preparing for an important board meeting, completely unaware of the quiet storm brewing in his own home. The stakes had escalated overnight. The janitor had risked more than he realized just by showing kindness. And now an unknown force loomed that could unravel everything. The connection, the silence, the possibility of her first words. The girl's gaze flickered between them, hesitant yet drawn toward the janitor who had made her feel safe. And then, in that tense pause, a subtle movement, a hand gesture, almost invisible, hinted that she might speak, or she might retreat forever. Every heartbeat in the mansion seemed to echo the unspoken question. What would she do next? The night held its breath, and the tension reached a peak. Nothing would ever feel the same again, and everyone present was on the edge of something unbelievable. The tension in the mansion broke like a dam. The billionaire's daughter took a shaky step forward, her eyes fixed on the janitor. Everyone held their breath, the air thick with anticipation. Then, with a voice soft and trembling, she spoke her first words, not to her father, not to the strangers who had crowded the halls, but to the man who had never treated her like a problem to solve. Thank you. The janitor froze, stunned, as if the sound itself had lifted a weight from the room. Her words were small, but they carried more power than any wealth could buy. The staff gasped, her father's face turned pale, and even the stranger who had appeared in the hallway stepped back, unsure of how to react. For the first time, the mansion felt alive, not with money or authority, but with human connection. Her father rushed forward, overwhelmed by relief and guilt. He tried to embrace her, but she stepped aside gently, turning instead to the janitor. It was clear that she had found a voice, yes, but on her own terms, guided by someone who had shown her patience, kindness, and respect. Just as the moment seemed to settle into hope and relief, an unexpected twist hit. The little hand-drawn notes the janitor had left her for weeks weren't just doodles. They contained a hidden message, a clue that revealed a secret about the mansion, her family, and her own past that no one had known. The revelation promised new challenges, new mysteries, and a life that was about to change even more dramatically than anyone could have imagined. The mansion, once silent and cold, now vibrated with possibility. And one thing was certain, nothing would ever be the same again. In the days that followed, the mansion felt different. Laughter began to echo through the halls, soft at first, then bolder. As the billionaire's daughter explored the sound of her own voice, her father, humbled by the realization that love and patience mattered more than wealth, spent less time in meetings, and more time listening, really listening to his daughter. The staff, once nervous and distant, relaxed, witnessing a family slowly heal and rediscover joy. The janitor became an unexpected fixture in their lives, not as an outsider, but as someone who had bridged two worlds. His own daughter found a friend in the billionaire's daughter, and together, they shared secrets, games, and laughter that money could never buy. The little hand-drawn notes continued, but now they were joined by letters, small messages of encouragement, and stories that connected the children in ways that made the mansion feel alive. Even the mysterious message hidden in those early notes revealed truths about the family's past that needed to be faced, leading to new understanding and a bond strengthened by honesty. The billionaire realized that true value wasn't measured in wealth or power, but in connection, trust, and the courage to care for another human being. By the end, the daughter's silence had transformed into a voice of confidence and curiosity. The mansion was no longer a gilded cage. It was a home filled with warmth, laughter, and hope. And while challenges would come, the family had learned the most important lesson. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can change a life forever, leaving a legacy that money alone could never create.